We'll call to order the City of Douglasville City Council Legislative Work Session for tonight, which is Thursday, October the 17th, 2023. We'll have our invocation by Pastor Roger Vest, Senior Pastor of Douglasville First United Methodist Church. Good to see you this evening. And then our Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the Mayor Pro Tem, City Councilmember Terry Miller. Please stand for the invocation.
Will you bow your heads with me? Heavenly Father, we thank you for the gift of this community. We thank you for the people who make this community, for the incredible diversity that you have brought into this place, into this town. Father, as beautiful as it is, we know it's the people that make this place special to live. Lord, I ask that you give these councilmen, councilwomen, give our mayor, the leadership of our city, Lord, that you give them wisdom, give them grace, pour out your Holy Spirit upon them, that they will do the right thing, make the right decisions, and everything they do, Lord, will lift up our community. Father, thank you for being here this evening and being in the midst of this work. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, for leading us in the pledge, and we appreciate you bringing us a beautiful invocation, Pastor Vest. Give our best to Pastor Harper, Pastor James Harper of First United Methodist. Welcome to the Douglasville City Council Legislative Work Session. My name is Rochelle Robinson. I'm mayor of the city of Douglasville. This is a work session where agenda items are presented for discussion only, and no official action will be taken tonight, but action will be taken on these items that we're discussing tonight on next Monday at our voting meeting, which starts at 6 p.m. If the business you're here for is not listed as an agenda item, there will be ample time under the agenda item comments from citizens and delegates for you to discuss your business. Just a few protocol issues I'd like to go over with you, and then we will get into the meat of the meeting. I ask that you would please keep your comments and presentations on a professional level, dealing with the facts that are important for this governing body to make our decisions. We will not accept comments that are considered by the chair to be of a personal attack on any individual or group of individuals. We will ask that you would refrain from doing personal attacks. If you deviate from this warning, a second deviation, we will turn your microphone off. You will not be able to continue your discussion. Only one person speaking at a time. Please do not applaud or react to speakers. Do not applaud or react to the speakers or speak from the audience. If you carry on a conversation while you're at the podium, we ask that you would please direct all of your comments and concerns to the chairperson. I'll remind you that we're only required to accept public comments during the required public hearing. If you have any electronic devices or cell phone and all that, we ask that you please turn those off or put those in silent mode until after the meeting so they will not be disruptive. I do it myself. The agenda items will be handled in the following manner. The committee chairperson will read the agenda item, then that person or persons representing that agenda item or applicant will make his or her presentation, and myself and council members will possibly ask clarifying questions to help us make our decision on next Monday. After that, committee chairperson will ask for comments or statements from the audience. There will be a maximum of 20 minutes for those in favor and 20 minutes for those in opposition of the item. I think we are in line with the county now, and our comment sections are 3 minutes versus 5. I'm not certain, but the county gives you 5 minutes, 3 minutes. We had 5 minutes, but I believe we're in the process of changing. If it has not changed yet, then we still have 5 minutes. Is that correct? Okay, so 5 minutes for each person to talk, but the totality are 20 minutes for those in favor of the item, 20 minutes for those in opposition. When you come to the podium, please give us your name and address for the record. There are cards that are out on the table that you should fill out if you'd like to speak, and we need that information for the record. Each person only has one opportunity to speak. This is not a question and answer format or debate. We're just here to hear the information, deliberate, make our decision, to help us to make a decision on Monday. Again, if you have any printed information, please give that to Ms. Acker, our city clerk to my right. She will make copies and disseminate that information to myself and council members. That's a whole lot of information. I hope that everyone's on the same page and that we all understand each other. If you'd like to have a printed agenda, they're out on the table before you walk in the council chambers. If not, you can follow us on the screen above me. So we will follow the agenda as it is printed. Now we'll move on to announcements and presentations. Outside of the announcements, we do not have any presentations, so we'll go to committees. Our first committee is Economic Development Committee, and that's chaired by Mayor Pro Tem City Council Member Terry Miller.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have no business under the Economic Development Committee at this time.
Thank you, sir. We'll move on then to Finance Committee. That's chaired by Council Member Mark Adams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have
You're
two
welcome.
items tonight under Finance.
Yes, sir.
The first item is to adopt an ordinance to amend the City of Douglasville's fiscal year 22-23 amphitheater construction fund budget. Shane Byrd is going to help us with that amendment. Mr. Byrd, welcome.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and
Good
our
evening.
esteemed council. I hope you all are having a wonderful evening.
Yes, sir.
Shane Byrd, City of Douglasville, 6695 Church Street. I am coming to you this evening to present a budget amendment for the Amphitheater Construction Fund. This is FY23 or fiscal year 23's second budget amendment for the Amphitheater Construction Fund. As some general context on this budget amendment, this is the second to last budget amendment that we will have most likely on this construction fund as we near the completion of the amphitheater in Town Green. I know everybody's excited as we start to see those finishing details get implemented. So overall, what we have here in this budget amendment, as we met earlier with the committee chairman, We discussed the overall net impact of this budget amendment, and overall, this will result in a $852,000 decrease with roughly $881,000 remaining in our contingency for that project. That then will be used for things like furniture, fixtures, and equipment that might be remaining over the original planned budget of $600K. So this will allow us to finish out any checklist or punch list items that arise at the end of the project, as well as just any additional wants or needs as the project wraps up and we determine some of these finishing touch items. So that is the overall nature of this budget amendment, and I'd be more than happy to assist with answering any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Byrd. If you would, just bring us up to date as to where we are. I don't know what percentage of completion we would be considered to be at, but I know we're close. I know there's a lot of small items to be handled in the next 2 weeks that have to be done. But we started out with a contingency of a little over $2 million, right?
Yes, sir.
And we've got to be 90% complete. And so even after this amendment, reducing the contingency, we still have, how much did you say, 800,000 roughly?
It'll be 800,000. It'll be a total of 881,471. So a good, healthy contingency remaining. But that isn't to say that that's going to be left on the project. There are still these
Right.
items that
Right.
could come up as a result of finishing out the project. But it is good to know that we're still within a healthy contingency for this project.
Well, I'm thankful to see that we are now, and I know that's under from the instruction of our city manager. I know she's been harping on this a lot about having a legitimate amount of money in contingency for things that you don't know. And if you don't use it, that's great. But to have it there in case we do, I'm thankful that we have that. Questions, comments, city manager, Madam Mayor or any of the council?
Have any-
Anyone? Mr. Byrd, you're on a short fuse tonight. Looks like you did well, and we thank you for that report.
Thank you all so much.
Moving on to item B, authorize the mayor to sign an agreement with Westbrook Towers Incorporated for removal of the Club Drive Communications Tower. Ms. Dickinson is here tonight. I won't say as a stand-in for Mr. Roberts, but we are glad to see her here, and we appreciate you helping us with this item. Go ahead, Ms. Dickinson.
Yep, thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. Melissa
evening.
Dickinson, 8485 Courthouse Square West, Public Service Department. The item before you is an agreement with Westbrook Tower for the demolition of the Club Drive Communication Tower. Westbrook Tower scored the highest from the bidding criteria. The total of this project is $66,400. Demolition should take about 7 days once the crane is delivered, barring any other delays.
Thank you, Ms. Dickinson. I'll open the floor for any questions or comments, but I did have one I wanted to make sure, and I had actually asked prior to the meeting that you were not in this afternoon. Does this include the removal, not only the removal, but the haul away and the disposal of that tower, correct?
sir.
We will not be
Correct.
responsible for
No.
keeping it, storing it, whatever.
Correct.
Okay.
The disposal is included.
Good. Questions, comments? Yes, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Melissa. We have 8 proposals that came in, and it's typical on a bid of this nature, you're going to have an outlier or two. But it seems that we've got 2 clustered groups of bids. Half of them seem to come in extremely high, and half of them came in extremely low. Like the highest, the difference between the lowest bid to the highest was 42,000 all the way up to 297. That's quite a spread.
Right. I know that the low ones, they were missing some stuff. And Mr. Byrd was actually on the reviewing committee, so he could speak more to it. And then the higher bids, I think that they were just throwing a number out there, hoping that they may get it.
Because you had, looks like 3 bids came in extremely high, and that's, oftentimes, sometimes you get a clue from what happened when you look at their bid, and if they've broken it down, and if you have enough, do you think you had enough of a breakdown to understand why they came in that so much higher? Three bids came in that much higher.
Right. I'm not sure, but I can find out and get an answer for that.
Okay, I was just a little curious, because if it had been 1 or 2 maybe, but, nearly half the bids came in really, really high versus others came in really, really low.
I'm back again. So to explain, I was on actually that review committee, and what we noticed in some of the lower bids, one of the high bids of 190 actually just provided a letter with no additional information requested in the RFP. So we didn't necessarily disqualify that particular vendor, but we did just rate them lower because it's hard to evaluate the quality of the bid if the information that's being requested isn't provided. So that's part of that. The lowest bid also had a similar issue where we just did not have enough of that information to be able to gauge against these other ones. So Westbrook had a well put together, essentially a portfolio that mapped out their schedule exactly to the point to where we knew that this is going to cover everything within the schedule that we've developed for the demolition and the hauling away and grading of that property.
And did they all visit the site prior to the bid?
I'm not sure on that.
Okay.
I know in talking with Alyssa Gordon, our procurement specialist, I know she was fielding those questions, and we did have some vendors that went out on site to look at it, to get their eyeballs on it, to help evaluate their bid process, but I can't speak for all of them. However, I can find out.
It's a big tower. I hope they understood, I didn't think it was like a ham radio tower that they're taking down. Okay.
And we did have one vendor that just did not, they were one of the higher ones that we just found did not have the relevant experience with tower removal. So we ended up opting based on experience, references, the scope of the work, the schedule of values. We determined that Westbrook was the highest scored.
I will say, this is going to be a sight to see to watch them take it down. That's a big tower.
And it is not the company from Midtown. So, but it is.
It's going to be dismantled, I assume.
Yeah,
It won't be knocked. There's nowhere close to knock it, so.
Yeah, they'll pull it apart, haul it off, and then grade and sod the field or seed the field where that tower once was.
Okay, great. And they're taking down the communications building as well? Does that go with it?
Just
Just the
that
tower
tower
itself.
and the concrete footings that held it in place.
Okay. Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Coach Watts.
Just looking at the bids and in reference to some of the questions that Councilman Miller had, the two highest scores were the two of the lower bids. Sometimes I wonder when we get a couple of random high bids if they're serious about wanting the job. So that's kind of what made me wonder. But did you say that once they start, it's 7 days, they'll have it down? Is that what I heard?
Yes, sir, it'll take them 7 days.
Okay,
Yep.
all right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I appreciate the work that the committee has done in order to score these, because we don't normally have 8 bidders on any RFP. And so if they followed the directions of the RFP, and then they would have had the opportunity to visit the site, I'm sure, on their own at any time. If they chose not to, then that's up to them. But I do appreciate all the work that went into it. Other questions or comments? Yes,
Yes,
Madam Mayor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Byrd and Ms. Dickinson, for the presentation. I was prompted to ask this question after Councilmember Watts said something about the time frame. So I know we're on a fast track to get everything prepared for our concert series inauguration. Is it, and resurfacing streets now and all of that, is it going to be done within that 7 days before the concerts or after our opening concerts in September?
We are trying our best to get it done before.
Okay, great. So, but it would not impede anyone from viewing the concert, it's just aesthetically
Yes,
that we
ma'am,
would?
that's correct.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. Any others? Okay. We'll take this up on Monday then. We thank you all again. Appreciate it. Madam Mayor, that's all that we have tonight under finance.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, staff, for the reports that you've given. We'll move on then to the next committee, which is Housing and Community Affairs. That's chaired by Councilmember Dr. LaShawn Byrd Danley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have no business tonight under Housing and Community Affairs.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
We'll move on then to Legislative and Intergovernmental Committee, chaired by Councilmember Samuel Davis.
Yes, Madam Mayor, we have one item, and I'm going to start with item A. Is authorized payment of expense for registration costs and reasonable travel expense for Mayor Rochelle Robinson to attend the 2023 National Recreation and Park Association Annual Conference, NRPA, in Dallas, Texas, October the 9th, 11th, 2023, for the purpose of supporting the city of Douglasville nomination as a gold medalist finalist by NRPA in amount consistent with those established in the administration ordinance for pre-approved training event. Ms. Hampton.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. As you all note that your Parks and Recreation Director, Mr. Chris Bass, notified us that the city is nominated as a gold medal finalist. The mayor has requested to attend the event in preparation for us to receive that award. That is not included in your administrative ordinance as an approved event that she could attend, so you all would have to vote to allow for that to happen.
Any other information about this event? So will Mr. Bass be attending?
Yes, sir, myself and Mr. Bass.
Okay, so she wouldn't be attending by herself. You'll be attending too, right?
Just for the ceremony.
Me too.
Huh.
I had a.
Okay. Mayor and council, Madam Mayor?
Yes, sir. Just an explanation to the, my colleagues that this is still within budget. I am not planning on going to the DC fly-in this year, and so it will stay within budget, and I would not request going, and it's up to you all, your pleasure, of course, but I would not request going other than we are 5 nominated for this gold medal status in the United States for our park systems. And so if they win, which we'll just see what happens, I would like to be there to support them, and if they don't, they're still number 1 in our books. But I would love to attend, and since I'm not going in September to the DC fly-in, this would not impede my budget or affect it in any way. But it's not on the list of approved places for me to attend, and so it's up to your body, the body to decide. Yes, sir.
Okay. Councilman Adams?
So then, basically then, all that we're asked to do here is to approve the mayor to attend this, because it's not something that occurs, although we would love to see it every time there's a possibility. But your budget funds for travel would be used just as if you were going to any other.
Yes, sir.
So it's not an extra expense outside of your budget.
Yes, sir. And
Okay.
if I stay with under budget every time, but I'm not going to the Chamber of Commerce's DC fly-in, so it would kind of take the place of one of those events that I annually attend.
A little more personal for our own staff.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Councilman
Thank you, Mr.
Watts?
Chairman.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just, first of all, would like to say kudos and congratulations to our Parks and Rec and our director, Mr. Bass. It would be very appropriate, I think, to be represented with the mayor. But I just really appreciate everything that y'all are doing in Parks and Rec, and this is an honor for not only for them but for the city. Thank you.
Councilman
Yes.
Lady?
Thank you again.
Dr. Danley?
Thank you, Chairman Davis. Kudos to our Parks Director and staff, and may you all have a great time. Just know we may not be there with you physically, but we are there with you in spirit, so have fun. Thank you.
It's like the Academy Awards, all 5.
Anyone else? Madam Mayor, I want to put this on the consent agenda, but I don't want you to go to the Dallas Cowboy game while you're out there.
I will not go to the Dallas Cowboy game. And plus, we need to have Councilman Estes and Councilman Miller weigh in on as well.
Weigh in on it? Okay, we'll just put it back on the agenda for Monday, so they'll be able to weigh in on it.
Yes, sir.
But you can go to the Cowboys
Not
game,
going
as
to
long as
the
they don't play the
Cowboys game.
Saints. Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's all I have.
Thank you so much, Councilman Davis, and thank you all for the comments. And again, we congratulate our Parks and Recreations Department for being nominated for gold medalists in the state, in the nation, not just the state of Georgia, but all the cities and all the parks all over the country. So we'll move on then to Personnel and Organization Committee. That's chaired by Councilmember Chris Watts.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Welcome.
We've got one item tonight in Personnel and Organization.
Yes, sir.
It is to consider a request to amend the Personnel Policies and Procedures Ordinance of the City of Douglasville to update Section 9-7, Work Matching Training Tuition Assistance Program, to repeal any conflicting ordinances, to provide an effective date. And Ms. Austin Bing will handle this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. Tia Austin Bing, 6695 Church Street, Human Resources Department. This item before you is a request to revise our personnel policies and procedures. If I could, I will go over the highlights for the record and the revisions that we are proposing. So starting at number 2, if you go down to number 2, these changes we are proposing to be effective as of July 1, 2023. If you move down to paragraph A, we are requesting that any tuition assistance applications be submitted 30 days prior to the course, so that would allow for time to review the request in a timely manner. If you would go down to paragraph C, there will be an approval process that includes HR being notified of any course changes after the application has been submitted. If that were to be the case, we would like to be notified. Also in this paragraph, clarifying that only courses by the University System of Georgia and Technical College System of Georgia would be applicable. And then also, courses higher than a master's degree in private colleges would be prohibited with this change. Paragraph E provides for the cost per semester, and anything above that would need the city manager's approval. If you go over to paragraph G, this is where I mentioned earlier the approval process would be put in place with this revision to include the finance department as well as final approval from the city manager. And then paragraph J also points out that this would be including our certifications that we provide for city employees. So if they were to receive any certifications, that there would be a stipulation as well as it relates to employment tenure. And so we've surveyed all other entities as well as it relates to their tuition assistance policies. We wanted to gather that feedback to see, to make sure that we are in line. We want to simplify our tuition assistance policy and just remove any language that no longer applies moving forward. So all in all, we want to simplify our policy. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Austin-Bing, for all of that. And we have anybody that would like to ask a question about this? Yes, Madam Mayor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and this is just for clarity.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Director Austin Bean. So you were saying with our tuition policy that you would have to have the classes or the coursework that was germane to your job description?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then no private university, so it would have to be the University Systems of Georgia or the technical colleges, Systems of
ma'am.
Georgia. So no private, like just Mercer, Spelman, someplace at the private university.
Yes.
And so the employee would pay for the course first and then be reimbursed,
Yes.
and there's a maximum per semester?
Yes, ma'am.
And then it would have to be, do you get a certain percentage? Like if you get an A, you get 100% B, 80% C, 70, and if you unfortunately didn't catch all the material and your grade reflected that, then the city would not pay anything for that.
So it's not percentage-based, but it is grade-based. So you'd have to maintain a C average or higher.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
all right, thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes,
Thank you. I
Councilwoman.
think this opportunity is awesome for our staff. Thank you so much for putting this in place. So I'm just reading page 5, I think it's this one, J. So if an employee receives a certification and their employment is terminated, it states at the last sentence, the employee may be subject to reimburse the city. What would cause them not to, just the word may, what would cause them not to have to reimburse if it was a outstanding circumstance?
So the city manager would have the final approval, so we would assess what that certification looked like, whether it had phases to it, and just assess overall, and then the city manager would have the authority to say if they would have to reimburse it,
Okay.
verse it or not, yes.
I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Madam Mayor.
I apologize, I have
That's
another
okay.
question.
That's okay.
Okay, thank you, Director Austin Bean, for accreditation. So the courses taken, of course, are under University Systems of Georgia or the technical colleges in the state of Georgia. What about our Douglasville University? Do those courses, I know that there, some of the curriculum comes from University of West Georgia and/or that is taken from GMA, and that's University of Georgia with Carl Vincent Institute. So can they take courses from Douglasville University and then transfer to University of West Georgia or West Georgia Technical College or something like that?
So they
The-
wouldn't, oh, I'm sorry.
No, the classes that we have that we are paying for via the University of West Georgia or Carl Vincent Institute of Government are not, they're not based on degree-based courses.
Okay.
So what we're speaking to here are degree-based courses, whether you're getting a technical degree or whether you're getting a four-year university degree.
Okay.
And the students, or I should say the employees, would not be responsible for paying for any courses related to Douglasville University because the city itself is paying through that via contracts with both those universities.
Okay, so the curriculum, though, is coming for Douglasville University, is coming from University of West Georgia and University of Georgia.
Yes, ma'am, but the
But-
costs for those are covered by the city.
So they wouldn't, okay. But credit-wise, they won't transfer. Like if, you were a dual enrollment student in high school, you can transfer some of those credits to college courses.
We're not, through Douglasville University, we're not offering any credit-based courses that would
Okay, it's
apply
just
to a degree.
informational.
Yes, ma'am.
For enrichment, personal enrichment.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you,
do
Mr.
have-
Chairman.
I'm sorry, I do have one other question.
Yes, ma'am.
So for individuals who would like to attend college, is this after they have applied for like financial aid assistance and if they're not eligible for that? Do you require them to apply for that first and then whatever is not covered, that could be covered by the city?
So we are proposing that if an employee receives financial aid, and they receive that assistance, that it would be outside of that. So if they receive those funds, then the tuition assistance wouldn't apply.
But they could apply, but my question is, you're not requiring them to apply for financial, some may qualify for financial aid?
We're not requiring them to.
Are you
apply.
encouraging them to apply for financial aid first and then? It just makes sense if they qualify for financial aid and then if there's a balance.
We would definitely educate them on their options, and then, as it relates to their personal situations. But
Sure.
if they do receive those other funds, then it would,
It wouldn't be like
yeah,
a
and that's standard.
double dip, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am, and I think there's language in here that basically states that the program, you want to make reasonable effort to apply to any
Right.
program such as HOPE. So there's language in there that.
That will cover that, right, okay. Thank you. Awesome.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions or comments? All right, I'm going to, with two council members missing and several questions, good questions tonight about this program, I'll go ahead and let it ride till Monday at the meeting. Thank you, Ms. Austin Bing,
You're
for your
welcome.
presentation.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, that's all I've got. Personnel and organization tonight.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. We'll move on to Planning and Development Committee. That's chaired by Councilmember Mark Adams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have
You're
two
welcome.
items tonight under Planning and Development.
Yes, sir.
Item A is to consider a request for development plan for approval of a self-storage facility for 2.79 acres approximate on Malone Road, land lot 704, 705, District 1, Section 3, parcel ID 07050130009 and 07050130013 for plans dated May 17, 23. Application by Steve Hocutt with Civil Logistics LLC. Mr. Thompson?
All right. Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council.
Good
Marcus
evening.
Thompson, City Engineer, 6701 Church Street, Douglasville, Georgia, 30134. The proposed development plan depicts a three-story storage facility comprised of 64% brick, 27% stucco, 3% glass, roughly 1.3% EFIS, 2% false doors, and 2% metal roofing. The total site area is 2.8 acres. The proposed development consists of 50 off-street parking spaces. The subject property is currently zoned general commercial, and the proposed development is a permitted use for this zoning district. Also, I want to point out too that the total amount of storage units for this proposed development is roughly 723 units. City staff has reviewed the application and attachments and recommends approval with the following conditions. First, decrease the amount of stucco proposed for the exterior to meet the 25% maximum amount allowed for uses within a general commercial district. Replace the exterior insulation finish system, which is EFIS facade material, with an approved secondary material for principal buildings within the GC district. Combine parcels 9 and 13 before the issuance of a land disturbance permit. Also obtain sign permits for the proposed monument signs that's located near Malone Road and Autry Circle. Provide a minimum turning radius of 32 feet north of the site adjacent to the proposed main office. Extend the sidewalk further east along Autry Circle. Modify the exterior to include more false window templates. Staff personnel thought that they should proceed with more false window templates to give the facility more of an office look and instead of a warehouse look. So that's why that comment was made. And then lastly, provide pedestrian access from the proposed RV parking area to the main office. The applicant is here to address any questions or concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. We appreciate that report. Basically then, as far as your letter is concerned, your recommendation for approval would have the 2, 4, 6, looks like about 9 conditions that the development plan would have to be modified to include. Is the developer already aware of that? Does he understand that as a part of the approval it would have to be done?
Yes, sir.
And is he in agreement with that?
Yes, sir, and
Okay.
they are here.
Okay. This is a multi-story. Does that mean that, and I don't see anything in the packet here, does that mean that there are, is this a climate control facility, or is this strictly storage?
I'll defer to the applicant.
Okay. Just give us your name and address for the record, please, sir. We'd love to hear from you.
Steve Hocutt, 500 Sun Valley Road, Roswell, Georgia.
And my question was, I'm not that familiar with the project, so I'm just curious, is this a multi-level indoor climate-controlled storage facility?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, so it's a little different than some of the others that we've talked about or seen in the area. I do see some of the doors. Is that the red checkered doors that I see on the site plan? Mr. Thompson, are those facade, are those fake, or are those real doors? I'm on
7.
Page 7 of 7, the red door look, is that really a door, or is that just a facade?
Those look like garage
Are you
doors.
talking about the larger?
Garage
wider-
doors?
Looks like a divided light window, large
Yeah,
and red.
that's an entry. That's
That
a
is
door.
an entry,
Yes.
okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Coach Watson, do you have a question? Go ahead.
Do facilities like this have to have elevators in them? 3-story? No?
I'm sorry.
Do facilities like this, they do or do not require elevators?
This has elevators.
This does have elevators?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I believe the red doors might be facade that you were referring to. earlier.
Yes, it's on page 7. It appears as though it's decoration.
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, sounds good. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, did you have a question?
Oh, of course.
Go
I
ahead.
do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, you would have to have an elevator in the house. How would you get your stuff up to the upper floors?
Well, yeah, I figured, but I
Make sure.
That's a lot of solid surface on that building, a lot of solid surface. And I understand that was one of the preconditions that the staff is requesting, that you break that up. And that's a very good suggestion. It would be very helpful to, I'm trying to correlate which elevation goes to which side here. Looking for a north arrow on your site plan. Oh, there it is in the bottom corner. Okay, so Malone Road is to the north of this. So the small north elevation is facing Malone Road. That's where the fake garage doors are. So that's going to be your most important facade, because that's probably the busiest road that, if I'm not mistaken,
That you
right,
can
that
see.
goes past this site. But even so, even on those side elevations are horrendous. That's just a lot of solid wall. What were I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on how you're going to try to break that up.
Well, we're just doing the site plan, but we're open to suggestions to pass along to the architect that is designing the facade in the building.
I would suggest you look at the storage facility that sits on Highway 5, right at the interchange for Interstate 20, which has a lot of glass and a lot of backlit space. It's not ideal, but it's a much nicer approach to the design, because what they've done is put all the corridors for the storage levels are on the outside, so you have windows that actually look out from the storage facility. So it gives it a little bit more of a human scale and character to it. So if you know which one I'm referring to.
I'm not familiar with the area, but I will
Okay.
look for it.
Yeah, have them look at that. Is that U-Haul?
It's U-Haul.
It's a U-Haul facility, yeah, that,
Okay.
it's right on it's on Highway 5 at the interchange for I-20.
Okay.
That's a good example of what I think you want to look at, but it would be very helpful to break those facades up a little, because that's just, you've got 3 to 4 stories there that have just solid block. It's a solid block, and it's not going to be, and this is a neighborhood that's starting to grow. You're getting more and more residences in that area. It's becoming more walkable. I don't think a lot of people want to look at solid brick walls when they're walking around the neighborhood, so, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anyone else? Madam Mayor?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for presenting, and our city engineer as well. So we understand that we do have this facility that is petitioning to come in with a development plan as well as another storage facility. But our UDO, our Uniform Development Code, was changed recently, but these applicants met the threshold to come in before the
That is
Uniform
correct.
Development Code
Yes,
was
ma'am.
changed. So I just wanted to make certain that that was said. So thank
Yes.
you so much. That's all I have.
Any other question, comment?
Yes, I have a comment.
Yes,
Thank you.
go ahead,
Thank you
Stanley.
so much, Mr. Thompson, for your presentation, and Mr. Hocutt. Thank you so much for your presentation. I am Councilwoman Dr. LaShawn Danley, and this is in the ward where I serve. And it's not anything personal with this project. There's, of course, you probably already know, there's a storage building on the other side, and then there's another one coming. The residents, as myself, many of them are not happy to see so many storage buildings back to back, although your application was put in prior to our vote from last week as far as the distance. Will there be RV storage here?
There will be an RV parking lot that's in a lower portion of the site.
So my question is on Malone, traveling north and turning right where the other storage building, there's a sign there that says no truck traffic. So I have a concern about the RVs that are coming in, of course, because there's a childcare center right behind. Of course, they'll be stored there, but they have to drive there to be stored. So there's, that road is very small, there's a lot of pedestrian walking there, and there's a childcare center. So how many RV storages approximately?
17.
17?
Ms. Stanley, if you look on, I want to say it's page 6, the site plan there, the lower left,
Yes.
it would actually show the layout there and
Yeah, I
the
see
number
it.
of spaces there.
Okay, thank you, I do see the
Sure.
layout.
Sure.
Also, the car wash that's there, is that's still in front of it? So you have the car wash, and then the storage building is right behind that, which is right in front of the childcare center? This would be right in front of the childcare, correct?
Yes.
All right. So you, with this being 3 stories high, you won't be able to see that childcare center there? If driving past?
Well, the lot is sloped downhill, and Malone Road is about 10 feet below the finished floor elevation. I haven't actually driven that road myself, but, and I wasn't aware of the childcare center that you're referring
Yeah.
to, so I wouldn't want to give you any wrong information. But I
Sure.
do know that the finished floor is 10 feet above the road.
Yeah, I would suggest if you have time to drive it so you can see the layout. It just makes a better feel when you can actually be there and see what's there. Okay, thank you. I don't have any other comments.
Thank you very much. Yes, go ahead, Mr. Davis.
Yes, I'm speaking as a for the community, and the community really want to know, when is this going to stop? Are we going to put a moratorium on storage buildings and because they're really not happy with another storage building coming into the community. And so, you know, I'm speaking for the community, they're unhappy about it. So when will this stop? Are we going to put a moratorium on it where north side, no more storage building and warehouses?
Mr. Davis, I would suggest that that probably would be an item that would need to be taken up for discussion and look at the possibility of instituting a moratorium. That's just my opinion. I think maybe legal may need to speak on that. But we will have to have, it's my understanding, you have to have a legitimate reason to have a moratorium and as far as doing a study. And I think we've just completed a study in the last 12 months, 12 to 24 months. We just completed a study about that. So I would say, not in defense of the project, but just as a matter of legality, I think that we would need to take that up in a separate issue.
And UDO was changed to.
Yes, ma'am. The UDO has been changed to put more limits on these types of facilities, and that will take effect once those that are in the pipeline have exhausted their.
These are the last two.
I'm not aware. Are these the last two, Ms. City Manager?
Mr. Thompson can address what applications are.
Go ahead, Mr. Thompson.
There's one more that's located on Municipal Parkway, 1516 Municipal Parkway.
Which is in an industrial area.
Yes, sir, that's
Yes.
correct.
Okay. Okay. Other questions or comments? Thank you all. We appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
And we will take this up then on Monday. Mr. Thompson, thank you very much for your report. Move on then to item B, the last item tonight under planning and development. I don't know how we only have two, but thank you. I'm not complaining. Consider request for development plan approval for a self-storage facility for 7.01 approximate acres, Plaza 92 Drive in Land Lot 53, District 1, Section 5. Parcel ID numbers are 005301-50032, 005301-50086, and 005301-50089. Plans dated May 23rd, 2023. Application by Keylin with Haynes Gibson and Associates Incorporated. Mr. Thompson.
All right. So the proposed development before you this evening depicts a storage facility comprised of architectural precast at 92%, 8% of metal. The proposed development consists of 625 storage units. Also provided a better breakdown of the quantity of the storage units per the size. And it also includes 12 off-street parking spaces as well. The total site area is 7.01 acres, including 6.4 acres of disturbed land. The subject property is currently zoned light industrial, and the proposed development is a permitted use for the zoning district. I've attached the application, the site and exterior elevation plan for more details. City staff has reviewed the application and attachments and recommends approval with the following conditions. First, provide an updated site plan to show a minimum driveway width of 30 feet for all proposed two-way driveways before the issuance of the land disturbance permit. Provide a turning analysis highlighting an appropriate travel path for a fire apparatus to maneuver throughout the site before the issuance of the land disturbance permit. Reconfigure the proposed stormwater pond to not encroach into the required 10-foot landscape strip before the issuance of the land disturbance permit. Remove the 10-by-8 storage unit east of the site that encroaches into the 100-year flood zone. And lastly, provide a secure area designated for trash and recycling receptacles.
Okay, so these are all conditions that you have mentioned. It looks like there are 5 of them, and I'm assuming that you have let the developer know that these will be required as a part of an approved finished product, and so that they would need to include those items. This is more of a conventional, it looks like a single-story mini warehouse complex. And the location is behind the Martin's Restaurant there on Fairburn Road, down Plaza 92 behind it, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. So I know we had rezoned that property some months ago, I understand. And now the development plan has been provided for approval. Questions, comments, anyone? Madam Mayor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Thompson, our city engineer. I did have a question. The chief and I were talking about other issues and cameras. And so I see that we were saying that we were going to ask people to come in, developers or people that wanted to build in the community with some type of camera to help for security. I know we have, the chief is applying for all these flock cameras and we have drones and all of that, but an area like this, just like U-Haul, that they have cameras on site. So was that not a requirement that we had or a recommendation?
I could add it
For
as a
cameras.
condition. I can get with the applicant and we can discuss that further.
Yes, sir. And not just for this applicant, but the previous applicant. I
I'm
just
not
remembered
sure
that.
if it's-
That we, something we discussed, but I'm not certain if we can or cannot do that.
It's
I don't
not
want to get in
something-
trouble, city manager.
It's not something that's required in our ordinance, but as Mr. Thompson mentioned, if this is something that you all want to put in as a condition, he can address. I think I don't know if the previous applicant has left or not, we can do that. It is something that I've already mentioned to Ms. Reed and Ms. Jordan to present you all with the proposed ordinance for those things, but as of right now, you don't have that in your ordinance. So it would be something that you would be requesting outside of that.
Have we required the previous approved applicant 2 weeks ago or last meetings to do that?
No, sir.
Is this something that our police chief was hot on as far as this type of business? Or I was of the understanding it was more for a residential multifamily application, not for every business that came in. I would assume that they may want to have a camera system for observation, because it's going to be hard to cover all those corridors without it. But Chief, can you speak to that?
Yes, sir. That's one thing that, whether it's residential or commercial, that we need cameras, because this city is growing, we get more people in here, we have more, we just had a burglary with one of our employees here at the city, daytime burglary now, entering houses with guns. Now, if we had some camera system that we talked about, I don't know, maybe it's some months ago, the Ring camera system that these apartments, they put them in, it's just another layer of security for the people that's coming in. And it's not an invasion of the people, because the camera is looking out in the breezeway. So you got people hanging around in the breezeway, whether they're selling dope or they're getting ready to go break in somebody's house. So we have a starting point to start arresting these people. And the same thing is applicable at these gas stations. We got about 25 or 30 gas stations around here. And they keep coming in, and you have your sliders coming in, you have all kind of shooting at gas stations. Not only, thank God we don't have that many here, but in the metro area and other cities and towns and states. We're just trying to get proactive and being on the forefront of security and safety for our community.
Well, I guess my question, the reason I wanted you to chime in on that, Chief, and I appreciate you doing that, that's more of a person-on-person crime prevention. We're talking about a person on stuff, a person on material possessions that are in storage, and I think that there is a difference there, okay?
Yeah.
But if you've got a gated, fenced, secured property, and the owners of that development are responsible and are liable for what's in that, they may want cameras. But are we saying that we want to require cameras? Because now you're adding another layer of requirements that, I'm just trying to be objective here. I don't know. But I don't know that, does that mean every business that comes into town, no matter what you do, is going to be required to have cameras on their premises?
Yeah.
No,
And I don't know
sir.
that this is the place for that. I just want to make sure that we're not overstepping what we're requiring for these applicants.
Yes,
City
sir.
manager.
And I apologize. I brought it up because I know we
Understand.
had that conversation, and the chief mentioned to me, we just met a couple of days ago about gas stations and how Douglas County just passed an ordinance for the county that any existing gas stations had to put cameras in their gas stations, as well as DeKalb County, the city of Atlanta, and it's becoming all over the metropolitan area that they're making businesses that come in require them with
I
cameras.
totally respect that.
Yes, sir.
ma'am.
Thank you.
Ms. Hampton, did you have a comment?
Just to address your comment and to Madam Mayor's, one of the things that we will have to do if you want to propose an ordinance, it will have to apply to the use. So if it's, fueling station, if you all want to incorporate storage units in there. So as of right now, Ms. Jordan's looking at multifamily, she's looking at fueling stations. We can add the storage units. So if there are others that you want to add, we'll go ahead and do that. Mr. Dodson has leaned forward, so I'm not certain if you have any comments to add to that.
These ordinances about cameras are relatively new. I know DeKalb County's passed one. None of those ordinances have yet been addressed by an appellate court. There is an issue as to whether or not local governments have the authority to impose that requirement.
I would suggest that we ask those developers if they have plans for those. I don't know that, in my opinion, it would be appropriate to require it, because you may open the door for some liability, just as our counselor has mentioned, until we have some law on it as far as the outcome of any litigation. But by all means, we could ask. I don't know that we need to begin.
No, we're not going to start with them. I
Requiring
just
it.
was thinking about it.
Sure, okay. Any other questions or comments? Anyone? Mr. Thompson, you've done a fine job. We'll take this up on Monday for a vote, and we thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, that's all that I have tonight under planning and development.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Thompson and the applicants. We appreciate you coming before us this evening. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, if you would please take the next two committees for me, as these council members are not in attendance tonight, Public Improvement and Beautification Committee.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. We have
You're
one
welcome.
item under the Public Improvement and Beautification Committee, and that is to authorize city staff to apply for the Georgia EPD Tire Products Grant in the amount of $40,000. Ms. Chan Weeks will provide us some background on that.
Good evening, Mayor
Good
and
evening.
Council. Chan Weeks, Public Services Department, 8485 Courthouse Square West. We are asking to have approval to apply for a grant from the EPD for their Tire Products Grant. It just promotes using products that have, they're using recycled tires, old tires, so putting them into projects. So we are looking at the area in the back alley that is behind the Conference Center Annex and City Hall, and on the other side, Gumbos and that. So that back alley, the beds in the ground that are constantly washing out with the wood mulch. And we're looking at doing some poured-in-place porous rubber mulch. So we would not have to worry about replacing that constantly every time it rains.
Thank you. Do you have any questions or comments, Madam Mayor?
I do. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. So, Ms. Weeks, this is with Keep Douglasville Beautiful?
It is not. It actually will be through the Public Services Department, as it requires a local government to apply.
And how would you get the tires? We have several tire businesses. How would you rank or?
We would not get them. We would use a contractor who
Oh, I see.
uses, that product in their application.
Okay. All right. Thank you
We
so
would not
much.
be responsible for grinding them ourselves or anything.
I know, I was going to say, we can have people lined up with tires. Oh, thank
We
you.
definitely have a lot we
With a
could
knife
use.
shredding tires by hand, that would be awful.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
It's a product you buy. Mr. Adams?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Just curious, Ms. Weeks, is this a product that would appear similar to what we're using at the Town Green? It looked as though to me there was a lot of that product there on site. Does anyone know that, just as a matter of comparison?
I would have to double check. I think the product is a little bit different, what we're talking about using. The last time I was at the Town Green, it was a loose
That's
rubber mulch
correct,
over
it
there.
is, it is, okay.
I'm hoping that they will eventually seal that and it won't be loose, especially when you're dealing with children and it's going to be everywhere, right?
I see Mr. Bass approaching, he must have an answer to
He's
that
got an
question.
answer.
I've learned a lot about playgrounds here lately. So, this is actually the sub-base material that we use at the playground. So what you've seen at the Town Green, that black material, is what goes under the top coat. So if I go back to Fowler Field and Hunter Park, you see that black surface material, which is what this grant is being utilized for, going first, and then they put a top coat over it that's usually colored based on design. So it's the
Is this
same.
the same underlayment they use like in Mercedes-Benz and other professional fields?
Correct, yes, sir.
It
It
gets-
is
You
used.
see it kicked up, it's actually granulated,
Yep.
but then it sinks quickly back down.
That they use for the turf.
Yes, okay, it is that material.
Okay, thank you.
Give
Thank
us your
you, Mr.
name and
Beverly.
address, Mr. Bass.
Chris Bass, 8830 Gurley Road, Parks and
We,
Recreation.
we all know who you are.
I know, just for the record, keep everything fair.
The award-winning Mr. Bass.
The award.
I will mention that the product that we are looking at will vary slightly from a playground material. It will not be as soft, I guess, and it will be more porous. It will have a little bit of rock in it just because we want the plant material in those beds to be able to get the rain.
Thank you. Any other questions? Do you have anything else, Mr. Adams?
No, thank you, I'm done.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Although it's not my committee, I don't see any major issue over this. I think we can safely put this on the consent agenda for Monday. Madam Mayor, that's all I have under the Public Improvement and Beautification Committee.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and Ms. Chan Weeks. I would ask, please, if you would do Public Relations Committee as well.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There are no items under the Public Relations Committee at this time.
Thank you, sir. We'll move on then to Public Safety Committee, chaired by Councilmember Samuel Davis.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I have several items. Item A, authorize the mayor to sign an equitable sharing agreement certification with the United States Department of Justice for sharing of forfeit access. Chief Sparks.
Yeah, this agreement we get from the Department of Justice for funds that we receive from DEA mainly, because we have a officer assigned to DEA, and we receive funds from them, and we have to do this report to advise them on how we are utilizing the funds. So it's and what we are dispersing the funds for. So it's an annual report.
Okay, Mayor and Council, Madam Mayor.
No, sir.
Anyone else? Okay, I'd like to put this on a consent agenda for Monday. And if the council, okay?
Looks
All right,
good.
let's move on to item B. Consider approval of an application for an open container day permit on the following dates, October 16th and October 20th, from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. in the downtown Douglasville for the Douglasville Restaurant Week event. Ms. Jackson.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Councilman Davis. Chelsea Jackson, 6695 Church Street. As Councilman Davis said, this too is enact the Open Container Day permit. It'll be October 16th through the 20th, from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. As you all know, Douglasville Restaurant Week is put on by Douglasville Main Street. All of the restaurants in the downtown area, they are displayed, and they they all communicate out to the residents about certain specials that they have during that week. And this is just another forum to ensure that we get residents and visitors into that downtown area during this week to try some local cuisine.
So when will you contact the restaurants and see if they want to be a part of it?
Yes, well, Douglasville Restaurant Week, most of them, this has probably been going on for about 5 to 10 years prior to even me being here. So each restaurant is contacted to see if they would like to be within the open container district, as well as being a part of the Douglasville Restaurant Week.
Okay, Madam Mayor and Council? Okay. Well, I'd like to put this on the consent agenda for Monday. Council pleasure. Okay, let's move right around along. Item C, consider approval of application for open container day permit on Saturday, October 21st, from 6 to 9 p.m. on O'Neill Plaza for Chili Cook-Off Festival, submitted by Ms. Lightner, Cultural Art, Council of Douglasville, Douglas County. Ms. Jackson.
Yes, sir. Thank you again, Councilman Davis. This is to enact the open container day permit for the chili cook-off. It'll be on O'Neill Plaza on October 21st from 6 to 9 p.m. In previous years, of course, Mayor and Council has enacted the entertainment district for the chili cook-off. I believe this would be the third year that it'll be enacted for the chili cook-off, if you all approve.
Okay. Any questions from Mayor and Council for the chili cook-off?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make sure that we have some representation there, and this is something we could talk about at a later date, but I hope that we're going to potentially have a chili cook-off booth
It was there last year.
like we did last year. Just curious.
You want to discuss it again on Monday?
That'll be
When
fine.
we get all the crew?
I just wanted to throw it out there before it got past us, that's all. Thank you.
I'm game. We don't have to discuss it.
Okay.
Good.
Okay, I'd like to
My
put this
time
on-
fast flies.
Okay,
We
I'd like
just
to
seem
put
like
this
we
on the
just did
consent
that.
agenda for Monday. Council pleasure, all right. Moving right along to item D, adopting ordinance to amend section 10-2 of the City of Douglasville Code, ordinance to add the town green property as a special event location. Ms. Jackson.
Yes, sir. Thank you again. Chelsea Jackson, 6695 Church Street. As you can tell, this ordinance is not changing. The only change is pretty much a housekeeping rule to add the Douglasville Amphitheater to be able to have off-premise pouring of alcoholic beverages during special events at the Douglasville Town Green.
So they would not have to come in and get a permit?
They would have to, this would allow them to get a permit, but then also the location added is the Douglasville Town Green. So previous to this, you could only do O'Neill Plaza, Plaza East and West. This would include the Douglasville Town Green. So for the grand opening series, a catering company could come in, get that off-premise catering license, and they'd be able to pour alcoholic beverages at the Town Green during the time that their actual permit states that they can do so.
Mayor and council?
Which means we could do our own beer fest if we wanted.
So you said we can do our own beer festival?
I'm sorry?
Okay. I'm listening now. Coach Watts?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The one thing, and I've thought about this before, and I'm bringing it up again, maybe this isn't the proper time. How do we recounsel pouring, which is, is something that I realize it's going to be at the town green, but with the fact that we're labeling it as a park or part of our park system, down the road, how do we recounsel that? Or
Really, for this, I mean, someone would have to have an alcohol license, and this would essentially be your only park that is allowing that type of activity. With the exception, you can include West Pines. West Pines serves alcohol. It's in your park system. It's not part of this, but it would be similar to West Pines.
I just, we have it in our ordinances, no alcohol at parks, so I just was wondering how we were going to separate those out so that we don't violate our own ordinance, but.
It will really essentially would be similar to West Pines.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so it'll be similar to West Pine, so that'll be all the alcohol, wine, beverages, liquor, all of it. Okay. Madam Mayor?
I had a question. And from my understanding, city manager is part of Park/CVB Tourism, and we were able to receive resources from the tourism and not solely parks. The parks would do the maintenance, but then it was in the portfolio of CVB. Is that?
It's technically a park, but your Convention and Visitors Bureau manages the renting of the facility, inclusive of the town green as well as the event space. Very different from Hunter Park and Jesse Davis Park or Fowler Field. Those parks are pretty much all exclusive to sports and activities. They just happen to have facilities there that are enclosed in buildings. This actually is a passive park. There's no sports going on. There's a playground there. So there's additional activity that's above and beyond what's going on. So the Convention and Visitors Bureau is actually managing that from the standpoint of the 6 concerts a year. Now, there will be things that the Parks Department does, programming. I know Mr. Bass has a list of programs that'll be going on, but for renting of the facility that will be handled by the Convention and Visitors Bureau. The difference here is that you actually have a caterer who is associated with concessions at the facility, as well as Ms. Jackson will be presenting to you a select list of caterers that responded to your RFP. So those individuals will have alcohol license, so they will have to be able to serve. You don't really have that in your other parks. You don't have a caterer attached to any of your other parks.
It's like the caterer here at the conference center?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay,
That's all I have
anyone
for
else?
you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Put this on the consent agenda for Monday, and if council pleasure, if not, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our Deputy City Manager, Ms. Jackson. So we'll move on to Recreation, Culture, and Tourism Committee. That's chaired by Councilmember Chris Watts.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have no business tonight in Recreation, Culture, and Tourism.
Thank you so much, Coach. We'll move on to Technology Committee, chaired by Councilmember Terry Miller.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have no business under the Technology Committee at this time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. We'll move on then to item number 16, which is Transportation Committee. That's chaired by Councilmember Dr. LaShawn Burdanley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have one
welcome.
item tabled from August 7th, 2023. Authorize the mayor to sign a letter of support with GDOT for the PI 0017811 Dallas Highway Improvement Roundabout Projects. Mr. Thompson.
Marcus Thompson, City Engineer, 6701 Church Street. So based on our discussions we had with the elected officials from Ward 3, with our engineering consultant and other staff members, we decided that the best solution was to make no action on this item and to hold off until we have our public involvement meeting, which is projected to be held October before the holidays. I'll defer to our city manager for more details.
Marcus is asking me to play assistant city engineer, so I'm going to pretend to see if I could do it. But essentially, myself and Mr. Thompson met with the two ward council members on the proposed roundabouts. They can address their engagement with the citizens, but one of the things that I did want to mention to you all is that, just to remind you, this project dates back at least probably 5 to 6 years. It was originally brought to you from our former planning director, Michelle Wright. It was to address the entrance to the north side, to have a gateway coming to the north. It's going to include paths, bike lanes, also some beautification. So all of this was part of traffic calming and beautification, including lighting in this area. So there are two roundabouts that are proposed. I gave you all a copy of the one that's close to Parker Street, as well as the one that's in front of Stewart Middle School, near where Mr. Davis's barbershop is located. We have talked to our consultant about the possibility of excluding these roundabouts, since the North-South Council members have indicated they do not want these. Of course, this would have to be ruled upon by GDOT. We also have to have our required public hearings. What we've been encouraged to receive is that public comment that the roundabouts are not desired in order for this to go back to GDOT, because it will change the scope of the project. Right now, we're in the concept phase, so if we're going to change anything, now is the time to make those changes, but we do need to have that information to move forward. The reason why I'm suggesting to take no action on Monday, if the desire is not to move forward, is to wait until after those public hearings before we can send any type of support letter back to GDOT. According to Croy Engineering, that shouldn't be any issue, but that's our request, is to delay sending over that support letter. I'll be happy to answer any questions after the ward council members respond to their comments to the project.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Hampton and Mr. Thompson. Yes, Councilman Davis and I did poll our several of our, many of our constituents, and again, I echo what Ms. Hampton has stated. This is about 6 years prior to the relocation project being completed. For those of you that were driving up and down 92 prior to that, the traffic was horrendous. There was bumper to bumper. That is not like that anymore. So definitely, because GDOT has gotten this far, they do have to have public input. So we definitely welcome public input. And the public is saying the traffic doesn't warrant the roundabout at this time for several of them. So we'll just let this continue to do what it does and let the public have their input and go forward. Yes, Councilman Adams?
Thank you, Ms. Stanley.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
assuming that this plan came about when State Highway 92 was State Highway 92, and it's not that way now. Is that correct?
That's correct, and from my, they also did a traffic analysis for the
Right.
reduced traffic count with the new road in, so, what they're stating is that they still feel as if this is the safest measure to have the roundabouts, based on their analysis.
And were they going to pay for this as a part of that project in the relocation, or is this something that the city would be responsible for?
You can address me.
So it's part of the federal funding that we're receiving for the overall Dallas Highway Improvement
Okay.
Corridor
Okay.
Improvement Project.
So is it possible maybe then that if we don't use it for that, is there something else it may be able to be used for? I'm just curious.
I don't think so. I think that the way that the federal funding will work on the project is that it would probably just reduce the amount of the project, and I think this would go toward some other project, but not toward
Okay.
ours.
Right.
Thank you.
You're
Madam Chair.
welcome. Councilman, I'm sorry, Madam Mayor.
Members.
Oh,
Yes,
thank you so much.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, and I know City Manager, we were speaking about this and looking at in more in depth of the project that is inclusive of not just the turnarounds, but bike and pedestrian, landscaping and lights. Is there any way we could maybe keep that portion or talk to GDOT to see if we could keep the portion? I know engineering has been done, and the superintendent actually of the school system says he likes the turnaround for the buses. But can we keep the lights, bicycle, pedestrian,
I'll let Ms.
landscaping?
Hampton answer that. We did talk about that.
Let the citizens answer it.
I think that the overall goal, and I'll have Mr. Thompson chime in, is that we'll keep the pedestrian flow all along the 92 route. What
Good.
you're probably going to lose is going to be a lot of those landscaped areas. The lighting will
property.
remain, the path, pedestrian pathways will remain, but I think what you're going to lose would be the landscaping.
That's pertaining to the roundabout.
Yes.
Okay.
So you'd lose those. We are looking at some potential alternatives, just in case it comes back that the public is not interested in these, so we don't lose that funding.
Yeah.
That Mr. Adams mentioned, because if there's not an alternative and it just happens to be, the straight road, and we don't come up with something for beautifying that, of course, that money goes
Right.
away.
Thank you.
Just a question, was one of the reasons for those roundabouts to break the stream of traffic and slow it down?
Yes, sir.
It was.
That's correct.
GDOT may be reluctant.
Yes, I know there was a suggestion of a four-way stop, and we don't think that GDOT is gonna do that at all. And I think another alternative was a traffic light. I did ask the question as well, since this is still a, state route, if it came back that the public said they didn't want it, is there a possibility that GDOT will come back and say, sorry, we're still gonna move on forward anyway? Our representative said he didn't necessarily think so, since eventually the road is gonna turn over to us. I asked that question because I do think that that is still a possibility, particularly what Mr. Dotson is recommending, that they're gonna look at it for safety and traffic calming measures. So I just wanna toss that out there, that may be that they may come back. I'm not certain, but I think that that's a probability.
Absolutely.
If I
Thank you.
may,
I'm sorry, excuse me, Councilman
Yeah,
Davis.
Yes, ma'am. So once that 92 was finished, me and Mark, Councilman Adam was talking, they didn't turn the road over to us as a city street or
Not
city
yet.
highway?
Not yet,
Not
not yet. This will all get done even before that happens, correct? Or at least sometime in, I'm not quite, let me not give a date on when that's gonna happen, but we have not received the road as of yet. It is still a state highway.
Right.
If I might add, then I'm assuming that's the reason that they're pushing for this, because right now they're still responsible for that as a state highway.
Absolutely.
That is correct.
And we may not have a choice, as Mr. Dodson has mentioned, because of what used to be a traffic issue, even though it's not a traffic issue now, they may not be seeing that part of the picture.
Yeah, I don't
That's
think.
sad.
They may not be. There are other critical traffic issues that are going on around that highway. That's not just right there, that definitely should be prioritized. But that's another conversation. The meeting that we had today was very refreshing. It was right on target, so I think we're all on the same page. Mayor Pro Tem, your comments?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I know that you and Councilman Davis have spoken out against this, and you also have been very adamant about getting certain types of development in New Horizon, and, you know, like grocery stores and more retail and so forth. I think you may want to reconsider your opposition to this, because I think that in a certain way, having roundabouts and doing what GDOT is looking to do, which is break the flow of traffic and reduce it and slow it down, is a precursor to some of the development I think that you would like to have. I think you have to look at it from that perspective. I mean, I don't have a dog in this fight, so I understand that. But I think that you're going to have to think in terms of how developers approach particular localities and what they're looking for. You know, they want visibility. They don't want traffic that's speeding by at 60 miles an hour. They want you to be able to see their business. And so if this is something that contributes to that, I think that may be something you might want to consider, is that it would be actually helpful in the long run towards seeing development along the former 92 corridor. So,
Right.
Councilman,
Yes.
Councilman Lee? Well, Councilman Miller, if you come by there and take a look at it, it's no for us because it's going right through my front door of my business. And the landlord and I and the other business next door have spoken up, so we'll put up a good fight. We'll fight a good fight.
So, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I think when GDOT does a full presentation to the community, there'll be a better overlay and explanation of what it will look like and what it will be. And at that time, I think the residents, being educated, will make a sound decision. So, when you look at that, it's beautiful. Of course, that was when we talked about the entrance. So I don't think anything at this point is written in stone where there's going to be a yay or nay. I think, like I said, presenting, educating, and then putting it back in the laps of our residents, which I really like to do anyway, and making that decision from there. So it could go either way. Thank you.
Mr. Chair? Oh, yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
I was wondering if Mr. Pumphrey has been brought in, to Mr. Councilman Miller's point about the potential for the Longview. Has he weighed in? And I know roads is not his thing, but I just was wondering if he had any input.
I have not spoken with Mr. Humphreys in regards to this. I'm sure our staff have spoken with him about economic development in the area, specifically about this. I have not spoken with him, Ms. Hampton.
He doesn't usually deal in redevelopment issues like this. This would be more of our economic development manager that reports to Chelsea. Just to kind of address what the Mayor Pro Tem was mentioning, there is some credence to what is taking place on this roadway, which is narrowing the road. So even if you take out the roundabout, there is some narrowing of the road to make it more of an in-town street. So if you all remember, those were some of the things that we talked about, was tying it into downtown. So that is proposed along this corridor. So he is correct when he states that those are the kinds of transportation infrastructures that oftentimes commercial developers are looking for, that'll promote some type of redevelopment on the north side. But as far as Mr. Pumphrey, he has not been brought into this conversation. But it wouldn't be something that he would typically weigh in on.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Councilman Watts. Madam Mayor?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. We appreciate you
ma'am.
allowing us to have this conversation.
Absolutely.
So City Manager, when you said narrowing the street, I know we've gone to Woodstock and other communities where they connected other streets to the downtown area. And so Councilman Davis's concern, I think when initially, when I talked to Ms. Wright, it would not, the engineering will not take away the parking totally. It would just be a little bit of impediment. and that this was like a gateway, like it looks beautiful like that as soon as you come across to the north, New Horizons area, you know, when you're driving down in that horizon, you would see this landscaping and all of that. So it would, I know it's a fear to take away parking, but I think when they narrowed the streets, it wouldn't look like a state highway anymore. It would look like a city street.
I think, and Mr. Davis can address this a little bit more, but Ms. Wright, when she was here, met with Mr. Davis and the engineers on site at his location. So when you look at concept part 1, that driveway that's on the photo that you all have, that is the results of that meeting to address the roundabout and the parking issues next to Mr. Davis's barbershop. So if you see it's on concept part 1, you can see where Mr. Davis's barbershop is right near Upshaw Mill Road, but that little slight cut in, that was to address Mr. Davis's, that was to address the meeting that happened.
So it would not affect the parking?
I'm not suggesting it won't. Mr. Davis will have to address that, but I can
Okay.
tell you this design, this concept design was as a result of those meetings.
Correct. All right.
So I think the chairwoman had an excellent recommendation to present the entire, the project as an entirety, and let the community hear and make an educated decision based on the information that's presented, where they can ask questions and see. As a lot of times we hear of something coming, we don't have all the information, we can make an assessment better once everyone sees everything.
Right.
Yeah.
And my last comment too is during this concept design is when Campbellton Street crossing was open. So Campbellton Street is closed, and from my understanding, at this point, there's not been any discussion about reopening it, so, yeah, so I think we're on the right track. I don't have any other comments, Madam Mayor, under transportation. Thank you, Ms. Hampton. Do you have another comment, Ms. Hampton?
Only thing to mention is that public information hearing is going to be sometime later this fall.
Right. Before the holidays,
October, November.
possibly.
We'll get you all those dates when we have them. They're planning for those right now.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have no other comments under transportation.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
our city manager, and Mr. Thompson. We appreciate the presentation and all the conversation that has taken place. So we'll move on then to other business. Is there any other business to come before council tonight from the elected body? No? Well, I had a couple of things. I want to congratulate the chief on the Youth Against Violence graduation. That was a great ceremony that you had on Saturday. And I did mention, and you all have already heard a little forecast, that I talked to the city manager about the conversation that the chief and I had with cameras for gas stations and certain facilities based on the city of Atlanta. I went to ARC last week, and Mayor Dickens was talking about that, and even the Chairman Pitts thinking about the Fulton County to make certain businesses had cameras, and Douglas County passed as well. But they'll bring that information to us in the next couple of weeks. And I'd also mentioned to the city manager about a moratorium on gas stations and car washes in the city limits. The chief and I talked, and I think he said there were, I don't want to say 30, 35, and maybe 50 with gas stations and car washes. It might have been 50. You remember, Chief, the number you told me?
I think I said around about 35 or 40. If you, we go to Thornton Road and come all the way in the city. We got a lot of gas stations and car washes.
Yes, sir, just to see as things come in. And if we wanted to add many storage units to that, then if that's the council's pleasure, then we'll have the city manager add that as well, just so we can do a study. But of course, we just did UDO with mini store warehouses, and these mini storages, the two that were presented tonight and the one that's coming that met before the UDA happened, they're all in different places. So that was that. And then the last thing I asked that you all would keep in your thoughts and prayers, the Radigan family, Miss Debbie Radigan, used to work for the city of Douglasville. She passed away this weekend. Debbie Radigan and Pete Radigan. And so she worked in finance, I believe. So if we can keep them in our thoughts and prayers this weekend. So that's all I have for other business. And if you all didn't have anything else, we'll move on then to updates from our city staff, our city attorney, Mr. Joel Dotson.
No business, Madam
Thank you, sir. Staff Attorney, Ms. Miranda Jordan.
No business, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am. Our Chief of Police, Dr. Gary Sparks.
We have a town hall meeting Tuesday, the 22nd of August from 6:30 to 8:30. We'll be talking about gangs and drug identifiers for the gangs and the drugs since school is getting back started, so the parents and people understand what to look for on those two fronts, and we'll talk about a little bit about our crime stats. And then on the 26th, we'll be having our jamboree, our yearly jamboree at
Hollis Street.
8304 Hollis Street. So we'll be getting it in.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. We appreciate that. Our City Manager, Ms. Marsha Hampton.
I just want to get just a little bit more clarification on the moratorium requested for fueling stations, storage units, and for car washes. I do not think that it's sufficient to say that you're just going to study them because of the number. Legal will have to verify with that. I think we have to come up with some reason. So what are we studying, some direction for staff for the purpose?
I would think it per capita
density
population
maybe.
and density and distance, and the one on Highway 5 is right across the street. The Quick Trip is coming right across the street from the other one, and someone said, "Oh, are they closing that gas station?" I said, "No." And then, I don't know, the distance, even on Fairburn Road. Tell me what I need to say so we can do it.
What Ms. Hampton is referring to is this. In Georgia, the courts have entertained distance requirements concerning alcoholic beverage dispersal. Other lawful businesses, if you're going to try to limit the number, you're going to have to somehow figure out how they're a danger to health, safety, and welfare. I don't know that you have the legal authority to decide, well, we got too many doctors.
We
got
have-
too many gas stations.
Do we not have distance requirements for tattoo parlors? How does that fall under?
Once again, it hasn't been challenged.
Oh, okay.
When you're looking at limiting lawful businesses, you've got to have a legitimate reason. And the mere fact that you think you have too many, in my opinion, may not work.
So even though it's on our books, it just hasn't been tested, is what you're saying?
Yeah, we used to restrict tattoo parlors, but, you know, like you have, I think at one time there was one spot in the city where you had one.
What about bail bondsmen too? Isn't there some
There
restriction
is
on
that.
bail
Yeah,
bondsmen?
we
Yes.
put one in, and that wasn't challenged either correctly.
So we do have some out there.
But the reality is that's what you've got to come up with, is a reason that this is somehow the number of businesses is a danger to health, safety, and welfare. And it may be hard to come up with a number like that.
What if we say you can't have a gas station near a tattoo parlor?
No, but maybe, I know we have not talked about mental health, but when we go to some of our GMA classes and they talk to us about how your cities, how you're formatting your cities and developing your cities out and comprehensive plans and all of that, the mental, I guess the impression that people may have when they come into your community and see certain businesses makes a determination on that city. And that could be, you know, I'm not going to say anything that's disparaging about different businesses, but certain businesses bring a certain mindset to people. So I think could be mental health. That might be a stretch.
I think it's a slippery slope, Mayor.
It's a slippery slope.
Yes, ma'am. I think it might be something we speak after the meeting on.
Okay.
Because I think, to Mr. Dotson's point, we want to be very careful about being discriminatory, because a fueling station is not necessarily something that's going to be advantageous to, you know, certain individuals. Folks need fueling stations. So I think we can talk offline about it, because I think when you look at fueling stations, whether our storage units and even car washes, I think we have to be very careful at coming up with a reason that it would actually be a detriment to the community, outside of the fact that maybe we have too many close to one another. So, but we can
Trying to turn
talk
them off.
later.
They're just going for it.
I remember several,
Let's get louder and louder. I apologize.
throw your body onto it like a
I was
grenade.
trying to turn them off. out, they go up.
We had the debate over tattoo parlors, and there was a local prominent business person at the time said that he didn't want a tattoo parlor near his business because he considered it a restraint of trade, because it would be unattractive to his clients. But I know that did not hold legal water at the time, so. But I thought it was an interesting argument. A restraint of trade was an interesting avenue to try.
So my recommendation, we would think a little bit longer before we engaged in getting a study done.
Okay, I'm gonna think a little bit longer,
'cause
but
the study
but
has-
someone can come into the community, and this has been said, they're from another community, and will drive and say, whoa, you guys have a lot of gas stations and car washes on every corner.
But we have to the data is what so whatever we're studying, we have to have data points that we return. So that's what I'm getting at when I'm looking at what we would be studying.
And maybe not even a moratorium, but can we have a count? So just for general information for the council.
We can come up with we'll have that, I can.
Within the
Ms.
city
Callen's here,
limits,
so
all
we'll
of
pull
the
those from business license.
filling stations, all of the car washes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And that's all I have.
All right, thank you so much, City Manager. I appreciate you helping to keep us legal. We don't want our names in the paper being discriminatory. I will move on then to staff reports. I do a staff report concerning information gathering at the National Brownfield Conference. Our city manager and our deputy city manager and our staff attorney. So Ms. Hampton, Ms. Jackson, and Ms. Jordan went to Detroit, Michigan, and they're coming back to tell us some news. City manager.
Well, I'm going to be brief. I did tell Ms. Jackson and Ms. Jordan, they'll give you some in-depth information on what they received from their perspective. But what I can share is that it was great going to the conference. Being at a national conference, we were able to get information not just related to the state of Georgia, but also on a national level. Some positives are that there's a ton of federal money that's out there and assistance available from the Biden administration for cleanup and environmental, so that's good. There's enough funding that whatever project we work on for the next couple years, there should be funding available. There's a lot of technical assistance available, so we'll be looking into tapping into that as well. Some of the unfortunate news is that all of the work that we've done on the old mill, we're gonna have to probably back up and punt. So Ms. Jordan will brief you on some of the legalities around why we have to do that. So it was, again, good going to the conference to hear some of the things and the resources and the context that we have, but we are going to have to take a step back and, in some sense, start all over from scratch. So some of the work that we've done, it's been done in vain, and I'll just tell you from a key point, prior to buying the property, we should have gotten testing done before we even bought the property. So we didn't do that, and we bought it, and we did some testing. But we are where we are. All is not lost, but it is going to require some work, and it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a lot of time. So with that, Chelsea.
Good afternoon again, Mayor and Council. Chelsea Jackson, 6695 Church Street. A lot of what I talk about kind of echoes Ms. Hampton's information as well. So going to the Brownfields Conference, I spent 8 hours in a Brownfields 101 and 102 class. Sounds quite elementary, but quite needed. So we all received basically a roadmap of if you want your actual development site to be considered a brownfield and to be able to have grants from the federal government, you have to do certain things prior to. So as Ms. Hampton said, of course, prior to you signing the deed, you have to do environmental because it is federal dollars you'll be using to develop that site. So that was probably one of the first things we learned when we first got there. But overall, the conference was great. We got to sit through and actually work with a lot of cities to do an assessment of a brownfield site. So we know what that looks like. We know what to look for as it relates to EPA regulations. They actually had our area manager, we're Area 4 for the Georgia EPA, and our area manager was there. She actually lives in Douglasville. She was quite excited to see us there, and we talked to her about the site. That was one of the great things that they had all of their staff members there And so I was able to pull up the site. She knew exactly where it was, of course, talk to her about development on it, and also talk to her about the technical assistance part of it and where we should start at from the beginning. She let us know that they're there, they can hold our hands and walk us through that, which was really great. Gave me her cell phone number, as well as we got to sit down with a lot of so part of the EPA, or like the federal guideline, is they gave a lot of grants to consultants and to other agencies to help local governments do a lot of the cleanup and do the environmental assessments and provide the technical assistance, which prior to, if you just Google and look at things, you go down a rabbit hole and kind of assume things, but just being there and talking with them, they were able to give us a roadmap, and we basically have, our marching orders as to where we need to start from now to get that site developed and be able to use brownfield funding and use a lot of their staff as well, instead of having to go through a lot of consultants, a lot of dollars spent. They have a lot of that material and a lot of that, that research and everything ready for us.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Jackson. Ms. Miranda?
I will try to just add a little bit to what Ms. Hampton and Ms. Jackson have already said. So one of the things that I learned was when you're talking about cleaning up a contaminated property, the EPA is going to have standards that don't necessarily require the property to come back to a pristine condition. Their big focus is on health of humans and the environment. So if you can clean up the property to the extent that it is safe for humans to either come and go or live on the property, and that the groundwater is not affected, for example, then that will actually meet their standards. One of the other things that I picked up on in one of the classes was that sometimes you have a property that looks historically, sounds very scary, that you have no idea what's there and you have no idea what could be there, but it's probably something bad and you're just having bad thoughts about it. But when you actually get down to the testing, it's not quite as bad as expected. The opposite can happen as well, but sometimes maybe what you think about a property, it doesn't actually come to that. Another solution, in addition to the EPA grants, is the ability to enter into a joint venture with a potential buyer/developer that wants to help in some of the costs that come with cleanup. And that may be something that the city needs to explore. Working with our Elevate Douglas with economic development, the mindset in the economic development industry is kind of changing as well. Typically, they want to recruit companies and developers to greenfields, to nice, clean property that can just be cleared and developed, that hasn't had anything on it before necessarily. But as development continues and as those properties are not quite as available anymore, the mindset is shifting to be able to work with the local economic development agency to recruit properties to want to specifically come to brownfields and to contribute to that cleanup in whatever way that looks.
Okay. Very good. That was great information. I'm going to open it up to council after I ask just a couple of questions. So, of course, we're talking about the brownfield. For us is the Old Mill site, one of the brownfield facilities. And so all the testing that we've previously done to see what was on the site, is there a statute of limitations that we can still have the testing data, or do we have to start again if we do anything?
The data is not void, but there are certain steps that we have not taken in order. So as Ms. Jackson mentioned, there are just certain things that we're going to have to, in some sense, back up and punt. We can still use that data, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're not going to have to seek another consultant to look at the data and revise it. So it may end up being you get a phase one, but it's revised. So it's not void, but we definitely did not take the steps in order. And the key to taking the steps in order is that we're not going to be able to do this with funds in the city's coffers.
Yeah.
We're going to, and nor should we, considering that there's a lot of federal funding available. The developer agreement that Miranda is mentioning, those developers are going to want to know how much funding the city of Douglasville is gonna be able to attain for cleanup, as well as for restoration. So the best that we can position ourselves to be funding ready, the better off that we're gonna be able to meet cleanup as well as partnering with the developer to ultimately do a site. Even if you all said today, hey, let's just turn it into a park, you're not gonna be able to probably take that risk on without some of that federal funding. It's not gonna happen. So no matter what, we have to take those steps in order. So the testing and everything that we've done before, we just have to be prepared that we may be revising those documents, not necessarily doing them all over again, but definitely revising them.
Wow.
And to that point, one of the key takeaways was that to even just be able to apply for those grants, you have to have that phase 1 in place.
Wow. Okay, and then workforce housing, this was going to be the site that Habitat for Humanity was going to work with us, so firefighters, police officers, teachers could have some place to live in addition to our boxcar container. So is Habitat still going to work with us, or will they move and bring that development somewhere else?
They have rescinded, so.
Oh, they've rescinded.
Yeah, so they have
Okay.
rescinded. So as of right now, we have the site. We don't have any type of partnership with any type of private developer. One of the things that we do know is that our environmental studies are germane just to commercial. So if we're gonna look to put residential on that site, we actually have to do environmental studies related to residential. So that's another component of having, again, to go back and do the steps in order based on what it is that we wanna do. And that's the critical piece about making certain that we partner with our state reps in getting that technical assistance, because those are the things that we don't know, we're not sure of, and also they have the contacts with some of the private developers as well.
And the last thing, can we put some sunglasses around the whole site, like some opaque fence, so you can't see it?
I will get with
Because that see-through fence is,
Miss
when you
Melissa.
drive by, it look like
Miss Melissa will
Hiroshima.
have her staff go over and take a look at to see what we can do.
That would be nice. Make it a color that, you know. All right.
I have
I'll
a
open it up
question,
for
Madam
council.
Mayor.
Yes, Dr. Berdanley.
Yes, thank you. The conference sounds very informative. So were you also able to gather information about property that has EPA, like the refinery? Those what's going around it? Are there any funding for, I don't know, just to make sure that the quality of life for residents that live around the area currently now, was there any information for property that already has entities such as that it's not starting from scratch?
Hotspot, you know?
Yeah.
Yes, so there were a couple of classes based upon ensuring that the neighborhoods around it also they have to kind of go through the study, not the environmental part,
Right,
but
right.
also go through and go in the development plan as well. So, yes, ma'am, I want to say I was in about 2 classes that discussed
Great.
the neighborhoods around brownfield areas, but they have to be brownfield areas from like the federal government that receive federal grants.
Right, I was just thinking more of the refinery.
Yeah, and the other part of that is that so for instance, if we're, looking at the refinery and trying to help in that area, the big part of it is that the local government has to apply for the funding. The funding cannot go directly to a private
Correct.
entity. So if Young Refinery is looking to do something, it would actually the application would have to be made through
Right.
us.
Wow, I hope that you'll be able to attend again and again. It's really good information.
Well, we probably won't be, we know we have our work cut out for us, so we know
Right.
we won't be attending possibly next year, but we know we need to do some groundwork to get some things done. And anything that we do will be at the state level until we can get our footing together to see where we go from here.
Right. The great thing about attending conferences such as this is you get to hear outside of what's happening, and then the networking. So, great, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Berdanley. Mayor Pro Tem had something?
Yeah, I guess this was my committee, I should have been.
Oh, I
That's all
apologize.
right. So we're, no, kidding you. We're rewinding the clock on Mill Village.
Essentially.
So step 1, what's going to be the first thing you come to us with?
Step 1 is we are making contacts with the folks with the technical assistance, and Chelsea can describe that. So essentially, we're doing our homework, but yeah.
Yes, so the first steps on our roadmap is to contact our area manager who will help with technical assistance, and that isn't at the EPA. That is actually ICMA, which is refreshing because many of your staff members are members of ICMA, so we already have that contact. So we've already contacted them. We'll be getting a meeting with them. When it relates to technical assistance, they will do the research for us. They will research any grants. They'll also research the property. They'll research around that property, and they'll tell us everything that is needed, and also, like I said, create our roadmap for that. So we already have our step one marching orders. We've reached out to ICMA and that representative. It'll be a long process, but we are ready, and we've already started that. So
is that research something they do for us, or something we have to pay them to do for us?
they do that for us.
Okay, that's good.
And there are a lot of grants. So that's what we realized too, is that if you go through the federal government and receive that brownfields money, that they have grants for every single thing that is listed on your roadmap and your assessment until you get to the end.
Okay, that's what I wanted to find. Thank you very much.
You can take the committee over, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Are there any other questions or comments from anyone else? Okay. All right, well, hearing none, Madam Mayor, then we will adjourn that committee.
Thank you, sir. Comments from citizens and delegates, if you have sustained the meeting and you'd like to speak to us, you have 5 minutes to come before us and talk to us about any business that is germane to the city of Douglasville.
Cindy Welch, 3002 Concord Way. And I know you're probably tired of hearing about self-storage units, but we didn't get a chance to talk, and I guess now's when we get to do it. But that first one is less than 3 acres, 723 units. That's almost 250 units per acre. I mean, I would love to know what their setbacks are going to be from the property lines and things like that. And when you're looking at maybe putting some additional things in for self-storage units, you could put a maximum number of units per acre that they could put in there. And that would be at least something that would help. And make the setbacks and any landscaping you want, because it's getting way out of hand.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, that's all you have, Ms. Welch. Thank you. Any other comments from citizens and delegates? Please come forward and give us your name and address for the record, and you have 5 minutes to address us.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
My name is Dr. Claudia Barnett, and I'm actually a citizen of Lithia Springs. But the reason I'm here tonight is because on the Douglasville patch on August, I believe, 9th, there was an article about the property tax being raised. Is that meeting for tonight? Because that's what it was listed as for today at 10 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and again on the 31st.
I believe that's the county. I'm
So
not
is that the
certain.
county? Okay. Okay.
We did have an ad that ran.
That ran?
Yeah, that ran with a specific date.
Right.
and We had to correct that.
Okay, so that was an error. Okay.
Okay.
So, okay, thank you for clarifying.
That was us, Finance Director? Was that the city?
The city did run one ad, but there are three, all three jurisdictions are having public hearings.
Oh,
See,
okay.
and it mentioned the city council, that's why I was like, okay. It seemed kind of incorrect, but I wanted to let you guys know that if
Okay.
it's incorrect, it was incorrectly listed.
Oh, wow.
Okay. One of my questions is, like how people are mentioning that there are a lot of gas stations and storage facilities. The word on the street is, yes, Douglasville is now being known for that. So the question is, how do we change that perception? Because it is true. It is true. Across from the racetrack, there is a car wash, and I heard there's going to be another car wash right behind the racetrack. So there should be some kind of moratorium if possible, because the question is, how many cars do we have here? How much stuff do we need to store? Do we need to buy bigger houses, or do we need to downsize? And if that's the case, why are we storing so much? So we are being known outside of the city limits here for having car washes and and storage facilities now. And it's not really a good look. I have been a part of Douglas County. Actually, my ex-husband and I owned a business in 1995 on Douglas Boulevard, and we started, we had a business called the Laserdisc Experience. So we had to basically educate the public in Laserdisc before DVD became popular. Okay, we knew DVD was coming and we came out of business, but the fact of the matter is we still had our business in Douglas County. So people do know me within the community, but I do have a concern because it's not a good look. It really isn't a good look. So, so we don't cross legal lines. How can we change our perception outside of this area is my concern.
Yes, ma'am. Thank
Okay.
you so much.
Thank you so
We
much.
appreciate, we'll take everything into advisement. We appreciate your comments, Doctor. You're welcome. Any other comments from citizens and delegates? Thank you. I don't see any. Not having any other business, then this meeting is adjourned. Chief. Chief Sparks.